Today's proceedings are going to be live streamed, subject to a 10-minute delay. Those with electronic devices may use them to report what is going on in the hearing room to the outside world, but only after 10 minutes have elapsed since the event that they're reporting. Recording devices may not be used to record or photograph.
So Mr. Lowenthal is going to call Jessica.
Yes, Mr. Lowenthal.
Thank you very much, sir. Jessica, you gave evidence on Thursday. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Yes, a couple of things. I was too emotionally exhausted on Thursday to say the things that I wanted to, so I appreciate the time to say them now. I found the inquiry very re-traumatising. It's opened an awful lot of old wounds, and personally it's been sort of quite damaging. As a CP and like the other CPs, I want to engage and to help, because I think basically we need to know the truth. But I'm worried about sort of the people coming in the next tranches, because I found this very, very difficult, and I don't think that it's got a trauma-based approach, and there's a lot of people that I love and care about in the next sort of tranches, and I don't want anyone to have to feel the way that I've felt during this. Another thing, there was mention on Thursday about my reference file, which I still haven't received, like a lot of other CPs, and I wonder whether there's at some point I might see that. One thing that I would like to raise, and that is it's about HN2's attitude towards the using of deceased children's identity in the tradecraft manual. For instance, using the words like suitable ex-person and a deceased child or young person with a fairly anonymous name whose untimely demise was unspectacular, finding the respiratory status of the family and assuming squatters' rights over their identity deeply, deeply offensive. And I know, myself and my family, we are the family of a dead child, and I know there's been other CPs that have also that are within the families, the category F families that have brought up the same phrases, particularly that they found as offensive. I'd also like to say HN2 says to avoid infant deaths or people over 16. And one can avoid the problems to some extent by using the birth details of an adopted person who died as a child and who assumed the adopted parent's identity prior to death. This perfectly describes my brother. We know that the new field officers were trained and mentored by the previous field officers. HN2's cover story was that he was adopted. I didn't know this when at the time, and I don't know whether this is something that he decided after meeting me or my parents. One of the witnesses recalls him mentioning this in front of my parents. But the officers that followed him were Jim Boyling, whose backstory was that he was adopted, and also Mark Jenner, who's apparently his father was killed by a drink driver. Given how amusing HN2 seems to find the using of dead children's identities, and how he seems to have used so much of my background, I would like to ask the inquiry to find out and tell me if my brother's identity was actually used by another officer. I had to ask my parents for my brother's birth name because I didn't know it. They were old and sick at the time, and obviously it's quite difficult to explain to them why I needed to know. They unfortunately never received any answer to that question before they died. But I would really like to know whether that was, my brother's identity was used. And lastly, the Metropolitan Police have accepted that my relationship with HN2 happened. I've put the letter in, submitted it in my evidence from them, where they admitted it, accepted that it happened, apologised and settled the case. They don't dispute it happened. The only person that disputes that it happened is HN2, and he's a liar.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm going to give you a chance now to just double check you've said everything you would like to say.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica, and thank you very much, sir. I have no further questions.
Can I answer two of the questions that you raised? The inquiry is not going to search for your reference file. If you want to do that, you will have to do it directly with the Metropolitan Police. As far as your brother's identity is concerned, if you can, if you have not already done so, tell the inquiry his full name. The inquiry will be able to tell you whether it has information that his name was used by an undercover officer.
Right. Yeah, I'll make sure. I think we have, but I'll make sure to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude all that you want to say?
Yes,
Very well.
Sorry, may I just interject briefly?
Yes.
Just to let Jessica know that apparently we have disclosed everything that we found on you on the registry file. That's information we just received from Miss Gargeter. So we have looked at the registry file and we have disclosed everything we found there.
Forgive me, you brought me up to date. I hadn't realised that. I was speaking of the general approach to the inquiry.
Of course.
That it's not within my terms of reference to explore the registry files of everybody unless it's necessary to enable me to fulfil my terms of reference. But
Right.
you've heard the answer.
Yes, okay.
So you at least have one of your two
Thank
questions
you.
answered.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Then I will rise to enable Andrew Coles to be brought in to give evidence and for everything to be set up for that to occur.
after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall
that
give
the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, sir. Could you tell the inquiry your full name, please?
Andrew Wallace Jardine Coles.
Are the contents of your witness statement dated the 20th of April 2022 true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, they are.
I'd like to start with some questions about how you developed your cover identity before deploying. You did not use the surname of a deceased child, as I understand your written evidence.
That's correct.
But you did use first names and other aspects of a deceased child's identity.
Correct.
And that was a departure from the then approved practice.
Yes.
What discussions did you have with DCI Gray about that?
I think I decided on my own that I would use a family name as my surname. I don't believe I spoke to him about that.
In your post-op debrief, you describe ignoring DCI Gray on that point. Were you, if you did not speak to him, being deliberately disobedient?
You could put it that way.
Cover identities and cover legends were examined and checked before officers deployed, weren't they?
That's correct.
Did the fact you were not using the surname of a deceased child not emerge at that stage?
I was using my family name as my cover name at that time, so it didn't actually come up in conversation.
Did you therefore deploy with your DCI believing that you were using a deceased child's identity when you were only using a partial identity?
I was using my family name as my surname, and he would have been aware of that, yes.
How would he have been aware of that?
It would have been on all the documentation that I obtained in my cover name.
But how would he have been aware specifically that it was not the surname of a deceased child?
It would clearly have been different to the name on the birth certificate that I used as my initial identity before I replaced the surname with my family name.
And what was his reaction to that?
I don't remember discussing it with him.
Could I ask you, when you were looking for a deceased child's identity to at least borrow from in part and adopt in part, were you looking for a child who had died not in infancy and before the age of 16?
That's correct, yes.
And were you looking for a fairly anonymous name?
A very common surname was what we were looking for, yeah.
And were you looking for a natural or otherwise unremarkable cause of death?
Correct.
Did you check whether the child's family was still alive?
I checked the addresses that I had, and the family were no longer there.
Did you visit the area where the child grew up?
No.
Did you obtain a birth certificate?
Yes.
And you adopted the date of birth of someone who was younger than you actually were?
Yes, about 4 years younger, yeah.
Why did you do that?
That was common practice, to find someone slightly younger than your own age, but close enough.
Why?
I don't know. That was the procedure.
Was there, when you were developing your legend and preparing to deploy, any written guidance available?
No.
Was there any written guidance at all about how to create an identity?
I don't remember it, no.
We've had some evidence from previous officers, for example, Bob Lambert, who said that they do recall some written guidance? Are you sure there was none?
No, I can't remember that there was or not.
What guidance were you given, formally or informally, orally or in writing, in any way at all, about sexual relationships in your undercover identity?
It was not to take place.
Who did that come from?
Martin Gray.
You had mentors in the shape of Bob Lambert and HN9.
Just 1 second, please.
Sure.
Correct.
What did Bob Lambert say to you on the subject of sexual relationships or sexual activity in your undercover identity?
I don't remember any such conversation.
Would you have remembered it if he had said something to you about sexual matters?
I don't remember something, so difficult to answer that question.
And did he say anything about forming close relationships in your undercover identity?
I don't know whether he did, no, but the very purpose of the role was to form close relationships with people.
Did you ask either of your mentors about how to deal with members of the opposite sex whilst you were deployed undercover?
I don't remember such a conversation.
Was it a question that ever crossed your mind before you deployed?
I can remember a conversation with, sorry, I'll just check
Sure.
the name. HN86.
And what did HN86 say?
That if I needed to find a girlfriend, that one would be found for me from another officer.
And how did that conversation arise?
I think it was before I went out into the field that it was sort of, if it's needed, it's available.
Did you initiate the conversation or did HN86?
Gosh. Probably him, but I'm not sure I remember.
And what else can you remember about the conversation?
Not very much, I'm afraid.
Well, presumably there would be some run-up to the proposition that you could ask for another officer to back you up.
I'm really not sure I can remember. I'm guessing it's to do with tradecraft, but I do remember that particular conversation about being able to find someone in support if it was required.
Presumably the preamble must have been that there may come a time when it's difficult for you to maintain your cover identity if you are avoiding all sexual contact. Is that the sort of preamble?
I'm afraid I don't. I can't remember. I can't help you, I'm sorry.
Did you speak to your wife at all about what was going to happen when you deployed into activist groups pretending to be a younger man than you actually were?
Yes.
Did you or her raise the question of the potential for sexual activity?
No. It was more to do with safety than that.
Sorry, more to do with?
Safety, risk.
So I'd like to be clear about your evidence. To what extent did you consider that you might have to prepare yourself to deal with sexual advances or resisting sexual temptation whilst deployed?
We must have had conversations about it when I was in the back office with field officers. There must have been conversations like that. It was a the sort of problem that you would expect to arise being in close contact with activists who maybe had a more liberal attitude towards things such as that. I can remember very little about that time, but I'm sure we had those conversations, but I can't be very specific, I'm afraid.
You've just adverted to more liberal attitudes. What was your state of mind, by which I mean, how did you think that female activists would behave sexually when you were deployed?
All I can refer to is sort of libertarian values that I was expected to find out as a libertarian anarchist in that field.
Do you mean that you thought you were going to be deploying into a promiscuous environment?
That's not a term I was expecting, no. The usual strictures of marriage and of courtship and all those sort of things were largely irrelevant. That's the sort of thing I would suggest I was thinking.
I'm struggling a little bit to understand quite what those two last answers mean put together.
Right.
Did you think you were going into a sexually permissive environment?
It depends where you define what is permissive and what is normalised behaviour. It's really difficult to clarify. My view about my own views about relationships were different to those that were in that group. That's certainly true. Whether you would describe it as permissive or just libertarian is a matter of language, I think.
Well, yes, I would like to get past the semantics. Could you just tell us in your own words, please, how you thought female activists in the groups you were going to deploy into would behave sexually?
I think it was more that certainly the animal rights groups that I was involved in were very much a female sort of dominant area, and that women were largely taking the lead in a lot of the activity. So that women it's more of a feminist, if you like, environment.
Do you mean by that including sexually?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And what did you do, having thought that before you deployed? What did you do about that?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Well, if you think you are going to deploy into an environment, take your pick of words, promiscuous, libertarian, permissive, or as you've described, where the woman might take the lead, what were your reflections on that?
I think the way I prepared was to make myself as unattractive as possible and to not to get involved, to be very sort of passive, not to be a dominant character, a dominant personality, if you like.
Was there anything written into your legend to deter sexual activity undercover?
I did have, so if you like, a psychological defence in that I'd had it's completely false, but in my legend was to have had an unfortunate relationship, a fleeting one, where a child had come about as a result of that relationship, and that I was unable to see that child, and I was rather cut up and upset about that sort of thing. And so relationships for me were uncomfortable.
And when was that part of your legend developed?
Quite early on. I certainly had a photograph of a child that came from one of my wife's friends who'd had that child, and used that as my own child.
Were there any rumours before you deployed about Bob Lambert's sexual conduct undercover?
No.
Did you speak to John Dines before you deployed?
Yes.
And what did he tell you on the subject of sexual activity or dealing with members of the opposite sex whilst undercover?
I don't remember that conversation.
Did you speak to HN 87?
Yes.
And what did he say on the subject?
He didn't say anything on the subject, as far as I
Are you sure of that?
No, as far as I remember, not. I don't remember.
Can I take it from one of your earlier answers that you did not discuss with the then Mrs. Coles that you might be deploying into a group which you thought would have very different sexual values to your own?
We had very frank discussions about the whole thing. I would imagine we talked about it, but I'm afraid I can't remember.
Can't remember whether you did or did not talk about it or what the precise content was.
Yeah, I can't remember the precise content.
What was the gist, please?
Gosh. What I can remember is her concern about me being followed away, getting back home, about there being compromise, about bumping into activists together. I don't remember anything about sexual conduct.
You were recently married and
Yes.
trying for a child or about to try.
Trying to start a family, yeah.
Is it right that DCI Gray and the detective inspector at the time met Mrs. Coles before you deployed?
Well, somebody did from the office. I'm pretty sure it was him, yes.
Were you present?
Yes.
What was said?
I've no idea. I just can't remember it. It was
Was
very, very frank about the time I would be doing, that I'd be away from home, those sort of things. But I can't tell you the detail.
Was anything said on the topics of either sex or emotional intimacy with activists?
I don't remember it.
Would you remember it if it had been?
I can't answer the question because I don't remember it.
Can we now move to your targeting strategy and have up from File 2, tab B17, document 726959, please. If we go to the next page, please. This is your targeting strategy. It's written by Detective Inspector HN 86. Can you help us with whether you had any input into this strategy or whether it was simply presented to you?
I remember the strategy. From what I remember, I was primarily going to be dealing with the Animal Liberation Front, animal rights, animal liberationist movements. But then the Gulf War started and there was no coverage on non-aligned activists who were involved in pacifist, extremist demonstrations and so forth. So it changed while I was in the back office to cover that area, and so I had to rethink some of my legend to fit around that particular area.
That doesn't answer my question. My question was essentially aiming at, were you involved and consulted in the development of this document, or was it simply presented to you?
Yes, it was iterative between us, yes.
And as you rightly say, because of the Gulf War, there was a change of the original plan, and you deployed initially into peace groups.
Yes.
But if we move to the third paragraph, we'll see that in the medium term, you were to concentrate on the task of identifying the next generation of ALF activists within or affecting London.
Yes.
And is the phrase next generation being used because Bob Lambert and John Dines had gone before you and identified a lot of people who were considered ALF activists?
I guess so, yes. There's a constant renewal of activism as people come into the movement, yeah.
Was there any special branch or SDS definition of an ALF activist?
Well, there were several, depending on who you talk to. The one I think I prefer is someone who's prepared to take part in illegal direct action to further animal rights causes which involve criminal activity.
Is that the working definition that you applied in practice?
Exactly, yeah.
But my question was there an official special branch or SDS definition?
I think that was what I gave. I'm pretty sure that was one. But bear in mind, I've worked on that desk before, so I think that's where that comes from.
Are we talking here about a written formal definition, or are we talking about a practice that has just grown up?
Oh, gosh. I'm sure it's in formal documentation.
And you were specifically going to target Mr. Lane as a way of bolstering and establishing your credibility within the animal rights movement.
That's right, yes.
And hunt sabotage was something that you were going to do initially to establish your background.
For credibility purposes, yes.
But not something that it was envisaged that you were going to do in the longer term.
That's right, yes.
Can we take that down now and move to your deployment? It's right, isn't it, that you attended various meetings of Gulf War resistors in order to gain intelligence about forthcoming protests at RAF Upper Hayford and High Wycombe?
Yes.
Were you at a demonstration in Parliament Square on the 15th of February 1991?
I believe that's in my statement, yes.
And is it right that this was mass peaceful protest?
Yes.
You then report on a demonstration at RAF Fairford, which took place on the 17th of February 1991. I
Yes.
can call up the report if you want to see it, but
Yes.
you were present, weren't you?
Yes.
And again, that was a protest, but a little bit more militant, wasn't it?
Yes.
And according to your report, there were 6 arrests. Were you able to provide any advance intelligence about that assisted policing, or was your contribution essentially your post-action report?
I don't have a document before me to prove that I would have put prior notice in, but I would have put prior notice in of where they were going and the intention, so that could be reported to the force on the ground that might be policing that demonstration. So I don't have it in front of me, but that's normally what I would have done.
Was this a widely publicised protest?
I'm sure it was, yeah.
And we can assume you were far from the only source of intelligence.
Absolutely.
You went to, as I understand it, a national Gulf War demonstration on the 2nd of March 1991. Would it also be right that that was well publicised and your intelligence would be but one source?
Yes, I was reporting purely on the group I was with, who had perhaps more direct action in mind.
Which group was that?
That was the Gulf War Resistors. The Non-Violence Resistance Network was another name for them, and then they became ARROW, Active Resistance to the Roots of War.
At the march in the National March on the 2nd of March, were they involved in direct action, or were they simply participating in a peaceful protest?
Predominantly peaceful protest. Die-ins was a common thing.
You then report or in the 16th of March, you go back to Fairford and you report on a preparatory meeting held at the Peace Pledge Union's day school. Can you recall that?
Not sure now. I could.
Let's
no.
pull up from volume 5, please, tab C6, document 22108. You'll see this is a report which we've attributed to you, as in derived from your intelligence, dated the 5th of March 1991, and you will see at paragraph 2 what it says about the event itself.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you recall attending that event?
I clearly did, but my memory of it is very, very fleeting.
Paragraph 3 gives an assessment of the forthcoming event, saying there's still a possibility that a small group of protesters may attempt to enter the base and demand to be arrested. But if we go to paragraph 4, we'll see that that is directed at the future. By this stage, the Gulf War had finished, hadn't it?
That's right. That's the transition between the GWR to Arrow.
And you are providing intelligence on what the Gulf War resistors have in mind for the future. They're not going to pack up and go home. They're going to continue.
That's right, yes.
And as you say, they become Arrow. And you provided various pieces of advanced intelligence about what Arrow were going to do.
That's correct, yes.
For example, at the National Exhibition Centre on the 15th of May 1991,
Yeah.
and a die-in on the first anniversary of the start of the Gulf War.
That's right.
Can I move now to a report about Arthur Harris's statue? In volume 6, please, tab C149, 22102. And then at page 8, it's underscore 008, I'm being told. This, if we have the page before, please. Thank you. This is an event performer, again, which we've attributed as being based on your intelligence, dated the 24th of May, about an event on the 24th of May, 1992. And if we look at the bottom at the main paragraph, the intelligence that's being reported 5 days before the event is Arrow has arranged this demonstration to protest at the unveiling of a statue by H.M. Queen Mother to Air Chief Marshal Sir Arthur Harris, head of RAF Bomber Command, due to take place on Sunday, the 31st of May, 1992.
Yeah.
You then enclose some leaflets. Would it be right that this is an event that would also have been publicised and leaflets circulated in advance?
I don't know how broadly they would have been circulated, but certainly they were produced, yes, that's right.
Put another way, is this the sort of thing that ordinary special branch tactics would have detected in any event?
It's possible, yeah.
If we could take that down now, please. Swords into ploughshares.
Yes.
Would I be right to think that this is the militant end of the peace movement?
Yes.
And there is certainly some evidence that they were prepared to do considerable criminal damage.
Yes.
We can only find a report which dates from 1993. We can bring it up. It's on volume 7, tab 223, 746 007. It's a group report, and if we go past the minute sheet to the start of the report, 8th of February 1993, you'll see it's a group report on swords into ploughshares. Would it be fair to conclude that this was long after your close involvement with the peace movement?
Certainly, yes, I'd moved on by then, so I think it's somewhat historical recollections from me.
And in the absence of any other reporting, can you help us with whether you were actually able to produce any useful intelligence about swords into ploughshares whilst you were infiltrating the peace movement?
I did provide that information, yeah.
How did you provide it?
Probably by telephone if there's not a report.
Without naming any names,
Yeah.
what intelligence can you recall reporting?
2 individuals were interested in taking part in that level of direct action, and I reported on 2 of them, one of whom later was arrested for the activity that Swords into Ploughshares are renowned for.
As I'm understanding your answer, you gave some reporting that 2 individuals were prepared to commit criminal damage, but not about any specific...
Not a specific event, no, that's right.
No specific plans?
No.
Can we take that down now, please? I want to zoom out and look at a few examples of your reporting which seem to be on a theme. Can we start, please, with Volume 6, tab 127, 730967. If we go to page 2, we'll see that this is an up-to-date and information pro forma about an individual. It's dated the 27th of April 92. We understand this to be based on your intelligence. The person concerned was female, 5'4", slim, had long, jet black, unkempt hair. Could we go to page 3, please? In fact, we'll need to start the paragraph at the bottom of page 2. It's the paragraph that starts at the bottom of page 2. She has now fallen out with the leadership of Earth First UK at Privacy and now only visits these premises to collect her unemployment benefit check. She has recently formed a romantic liaison with fellow squatter Privacy, and with the return of some stability to her private life, she intends to become more active in animal rights issues. Despite her good intentions, Privacy is not considered to be a committed activist by fellow campaigners due to her irregular involvement, but is nevertheless regarded with some affection by many because of her pleasant nature and good looks. Why were you reporting on the good looks of a female activist?
Difficult to be absolutely clear on the way that intelligence was gathered, but I guess it's reported speech from someone.
Why would you need to report that direct speech, even if that is what it is?
It's what was said, so therefore I reported it.
Even though it was about someone's attractiveness?
Exactly, but people select their friends on that sort of criteria. It's perfectly normal.
What's the policing value in that?
The policing value in the fact that someone is popular with another group of people, I suppose.
That might have policing value, but good looks. Why are good looks of policing value?
Of itself, not of policing value, but the fact that someone is personable and liked by others is relevant.
Can we take that down and can we go in file 7, please, to tab 209, 739652. And can we have page 2? This is another pro forma, this one dated the 1st of December 1992, about a female born about 1967, 5'9", slim, long brown hair. And if we look at the text at the bottom of the page, privacy moved from privacy to a room in a house in privacy on the 19th of November. She is almost paranoid about police interest in her ALIU, an Animal Liberation Front activity, and she had hoped to keep her new address secret. However, Ronnie Lee telephoned her to arrange a meeting, and she is now convinced that police know where she lives. During Ronnie Lee's imprisonment, privacy was a regular correspondent with him. It seems that Lee has a romantic interest in privacy, who is strikingly attractive, which is not reciprocated. Why did you report that the woman in question was strikingly attractive?
I'm not sure who this might be, but it's a matter of fact that she was, I suppose.
But why is that of any relevance to policing?
It would explain Ronnie Lee's interest in her.
Why is it necessary to report that someone who is the subject of an unwanted romantic interest is strikingly attractive?
It's a descriptor of her appearance.
No policing value?
It's helpful in identifying someone, I think, if you know that they are particularly attractive and they're in a group of people, you have a load of photographs and you're trying to identify individuals.
It's highly subjective, isn't it?
Of course it is, yes. Yeah.
And if you want to identify someone, it's much better to report objective particulars, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the reality that there was no policing value in reporting that this woman was strikingly attractive.
That's your view, yes, I understand that.
Now I'm asking you.
Well, I reported it, it seems, so I felt it was important to report it.
And what policing value, if any, did you think it had?
I was simply reporting the fact. Again, I'm guessing it's reported speech.
This is not in inverted commas, is it?
No, no.
And the sentence, it seems that Lee has a romantic interest in privacy who is strikingly attractive, doesn't sound much like reported speech, does it?
It's hard to say with the summation in the report. It might have been my own view that she was strikingly attractive. That's certainly possible, yeah.
Can we take that down and have up from Volume 7, Tab C 216, 739, 653? Can we go to page 2, please? 12th of January 1993, another up-to-date and information pro forma about an unemployed animal rights activist. 5'9", slim, long brown hair, and under the PECS heading, vegan, very attractive. Why were you reporting that this woman was very attractive?
I'm not entirely sure this is my report, but would it be possible to see an unredacted version to see to whom it refers?
I'm told that you accept attribution of this report in your witness statement,
Okay.
and if we go back a page, you will see the covering minute.
HN2, yep. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, if you see the top paragraph, subject is of public order, police interest. If a copy is sent to box 500, it must be sent under cover to F2, quoting HN2.
Yep.
So this is HN86, sending it off to, directing that it be sent off to the security service and filed as one of your reports.
Yes.
Okay, so if we go back to, why are you reporting that she's very attractive?
Probably because she was at the time.
Could we now look at the text underneath? Subject recently moved to the above address with a friend, privacy, who she used to live close to in privacy. She moved because of her fear of police interest in her and because of friction within and disintegration of the group of her associates, which included ASW, person 2 and person 1. The friction has been caused by subject's rejection of ASW's sexual advances whilst accepting those of person 1 and person 2, each without the knowledge of the other. As a result, person 2 has isolated himself from the group, but others seem to have been reconciled. And then if we can go to the next page. Subject is now intimately involved with person 3, known as Privacy, who is a crusty type and a member of the Brixton Hunt Saboteurs group living in a squat at Privacy Brixton. It is highly likely that subject will entice person 3 into becoming more deeply involved in ALF-style activity. It might be said that there's more sexual gossip in that passage than in a copy of the News of the World. Why are you reporting so much sexual gossip?
I think it indicates the volatility within that particular group and the relationships between different people.
It's not necessary, though, is it, to report on all the intricate web of who's sleeping with who. You can just say they've fallen out, moved home.
I was probably more keen on getting the detail right, and the reasons are rather relevant, surely.
Was any of the 3 reports that I've just shown you the subject to any negative criticism or guidance from your managers?
No.
Why are these reports so sexualised?
I think it indicates the way that groups form and split apart because of interpersonal relationships that guide how different people work together and live together. It's a fairly movable feast about who knows who likes who falls out with who over that period. And it was generally around relationships.
You're reporting people's good looks, they're strikingly attractive, they're very attractive, you're reporting sexual gossip. Was the sexual attractiveness of the women you were mixing with on your mind?
No, not for me, but it was certainly a matter of note.
Were you in fact thinking of those women in sexual terms?
No.
Well, why did you report so much sexual material which was not of policing value?
I say again, it was largely because it indicated the volatility of the relationships between people in these particular groups and how it changed moment by moment.
Can I now ask you about the Monday and Thursday meetings in the safe house?
Yes.
Was there ever, in your experience, any sexist banter?
I don't know. I can't recall any. I would be surprised if there wasn't.
Were there ever any sexual comments?
Gosh, I don't know. I can't think of any, no.
Is it likely there would have been?
It's entirely possible.
Sexist jokes?
Yeah, well, that's 32 years ago. I think it's a possibility that took place.
A possibility.
Yeah.
It's a reality probably happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sexually crude comments?
Unlikely.
Why unlikely?
It doesn't fit in with what the purpose of the meetings there were for.
Can we take the document down now, please? I want to now ask you about a woman called Emily Johns. Can
Yes.
you recall her from the peace movement?
I do.
She was a prominent figure in the peace movement.
Yes.
If we could have up, please, MPS 0749597. We think you've got a PDF of it. This is a late addition to the bundle. I'm told, sir, it's on your trolley underneath the photographs.
Yep.
So, right at the very bottom on the right-hand side, sir, as you look at it. This is a witness statement made by Emily Johns. She talks about meeting you. You did meet her undercover, didn't you?
Yes, I did, yes.
And about the demonstrations against the Gulf War. And if we go over the page, the one that you just had, the one that begins is likely. Thank you. If we can pick up on the fourth line of that page, from the fourth line onwards. My strongest memory of Andy was that one day in the early summer, he gave me a lift home from the pub. I do not recall which pub. He gave me a lift in his van. I remember him telling me that he was the press officer for ALF. Can you recall giving Emily Johns a lift home in your van?
I remember this conversation, but I don't remember it being in a van. It may well have been.
Did you tell her that you were the press officer for the ALF?
No, I said that I was involved with the ALFSG.
I thought there was no way he could be their press officer, and if he was, he would not tell me.
That was her misunderstanding. I remember that being I was quite amused at that because the SG role was fairly overt. I was involved in World Animals Day. A lot of people knew me in that role.
Did you explain that to her?
No, I think I just laughed.
My sense was that he was trying to show off regarding his political credentials. I was wary of him and did not believe him. I invited him in, but it got later and later, and my sense was that he wanted to get off with me. Did you stay until late at Emily Johns's home?
What she's referring to there is a different event. If you would like me to explain, I remember it very clearly.
Please do.
This was early on. I met her. She was then looking to move to an address in, I think, Leytonstone from the family address in Camden, I think. And she wanted me to move a large cabinet. I think it's an artist's cabinet where you put all of your artist materials and papers and so on. It required two people to move it. So I went to her home address, collected this, drove round. It was quite late at night by this stage. Drove round to the address in Leytonstone, unloaded the cabinet, took it upstairs to a bedroom, and I was rather surprised to find a young woman asleep in the bed when I took this cabinet into the room with Emily. And she said, "Oh, don't worry, she's totally deaf. She won't wake up. She won't hear you." And then we went downstairs, and she couldn't pay. I didn't expect her to pay for the trip, so she made me supper. I had a can of beer, and I accidentally leant against one of the paintings there, I remember, and I slightly scuffed one of the wet patches of paint, which caused us some upset. And then I left around about, well, late at night. It was certainly late at night. But this idea that I was flirtatious was irrelevant at the time. I thought if she was moving into this house with a young woman asleep in the one bed in the house, that there was a possibility that she would not be interested in me. It's very clear she was, well, I say clear, I would assume that she was in a relationship with this young woman. So if I had to say I was flirtatious with her, it's a bit odd.
And if she had been a bit interested in you?
Well, she wasn't.
If she had?
She wasn't.
And I'm asking you on the hypothetical if she had been.
Well, then I would have dissuaded her of that interest.
She says, I suppose teasingly, I asked whether he wanted to stay the night, realizing this. He eagerly said yes, and so I offered him a mattress and sleeping bag in the artist's studio on the ground floor of the house. Did that happen?
I told her if I was going to drink any more, then I wouldn't be driving. And that was something I did constantly, which was I didn't want to be drink driving. I was very strict about it. If it had been necessary, I had a sleeping bag and a mattress in the van.
Doesn't quite answer my question. Did she offer you sleeping accommodation in the house?
It wasn't that way around, no. I said to her, if I'm going to get drunk, I'm going to stay over because I'm not going to drive under the influence of alcohol.
It goes on. The house was a two-storey house with a studio downstairs and the living area upstairs. It was a house shared with another female artist. She was not, if we go over the page, at home during this time. When I put the mattress down, he stormed out and slammed the door. Did that happen?
That's fabricated.
I did not see him again. Prior to that, his manner had been flirty. Did you do anything that might have been construed as flirtatious?
I was just friendly, and we were part of the same protest group early on, and we did meet up later.
Might she have got the idea that you were after sexual activity?
I'm not in control of her perceptions. That wasn't what I did.
Well, you do know what you did.
Yeah.
That's what my question is directed.
Yes, exactly. Which was not being flirtatious. Friendly.
Why would Emily Johns fabricate what on one view is simply her heading off what she thought was going to be an unwanted sexual advance?
That presupposes that's what actually happened at the time, and I dispute that.
Why? I'm giving you don't have to take it, I'm just giving you the opportunity.
Sure.
Do you wish to advance any evidence as to why Emily Johns would make up this incident?
I have a view, but that's not evidence, and I wouldn't want to give a view without evidence.
My sense was that he wanted to get into a sexual relationship. I'm not sure why he wanted to get into a sexual relationship with me. Our house was on the route of the M11, and these houses were knocked down so the M11 could be built. Possibly it could have been because of that. Is it true that the house was on the route of the then yet to be built M11?
I had no idea about any of that.
And you do have recollections, as you've described, of going to Emily Johns's house. These would have been in the summer of 91?
Best of my recollection, it was early on in the time when I was still involved in the pacifist movement.
So
yeah.
Before that, you would say?
Early on during that period, yeah. We'd met, and she was the person who got me involved in the Gulf War resistors, and that's, I think, how a friendship developed between us.
Can we take that down now, please? Do you recall Detector Chief Superintendent Potter joining the chain of command in April 1991?
In C Squad, would that be right?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was, as a Detective Chief Superintendent, a senior officer.
I thought he was a superintendent. Forgive me.
Did you meet Mr. Potter?
I think so, yes.
In what circumstances did you meet Mr. Potter?
I'm not entirely sure. He may have come to visit us at one time. I'm not entirely sure.
At the safe house?
It's possible, yeah. Yeah.
Did you have any prior knowledge of either Chief Superintendent or Superintendent Potter?
I'd not worked with him before, no.
I'm going to read out a paragraph from a witness statement the inquiry has obtained from Peter Francis for the forthcoming Tranche 3 hearings.
Yes.
Detective Chief Superintendent Robert Potter used the N-word regularly, including at SDS safe houses. He was known as Potty Bob for having a potty mouth, but also for being mentally unstable. When he came to the SDS meetings, he behaved like he was one of the lads. He would drink a lot and was always very loud, and indulged in casual racism and sexism. After leaving one of these SDS meetings, he was arrested for racist behaviour in a public place, ending his police career. First of all, did Chief Superintendent Robert Potter use the N-word in your presence at the SDS safe house or anywhere else?
No. Not that I remember, no.
Would you remember it if he had?
I'd been shocked if he had, yes.
Was he known as Potty Bob?
That's news to me.
Was he regarded as being mentally unstable?
I mean, I know the story about this particular case. The fact that the individual had mental health issues was eventually discovered, yes. But I don't think at the time he was regarded in that way by staff, no.
How did you regard his mental stability from what you saw of him?
Really hard to say. Nothing out of the ordinary in his behaviour that I remember.
Did he behave like one of the lads when he attended the safe house?
I couldn't help you, I'm sorry.
I beg your pardon?
I can't help you, I'm sorry. Don't remember any of that.
Would you have remembered it if he had?
Possibly, yes. If there was anything striking, unusual, yes, possibly.
Did he drink a lot?
I doubt that very much. I didn't see it. Sorry, let me be precise. I don't remember that. Again, if he'd been heavily drinking, that would have been something of comment, yeah.
Was he very loud?
By very, do you mean, I'm not entirely sure what you mean.
the ordinary
shouting
natural
or-
meanings to very loud.
He wasn't quietly spoken man, no. But to say very loud as in he was shouty or anything like that, I don't think that's right. No.
In your own words, how would you describe him?
He was quite an assertive chap, as I remember.
Volume-wise?
Well, not shouty, no, but I suppose he could project his voice, yes.
At the time, in the early 90s, would you have been equipped to detect racist or sexist comments?
Yes.
Did he indulge in casual racist comments?
I don't remember that, no.
Did he indulge in casual sexist comments?
I don't remember any of that, no.
Might he have done?
Unlikely, but having known what his future held in terms of his medical condition, it's possible.
How did the lads behave in the SDS safe house?
A regular meeting, we'd turn up. We had quite close friendships. We'd sit and chat. I used to arrange golf with a couple of others as our downtime. The officer would come, we'd sit, we'd go through the process. We'd occasionally cook meals. And occasionally go down to the pub afterwards, have a couple of beers, decompress, and then go on our way.
And would decompressing involve talking about some of the people you were mixing with,
Highly possible, yes.
and whether they were strikingly attractive?
Whether they were an irritation or not, I would guess.
Whether they were strikingly attractive?
I don't remember that sort of conversation, but certainly if someone was really causing you some stress, then you would probably mention them.
Did you hear at the time about DCS Potter's arrest?
Yes.
Was it quite sensational news?
It was very extraordinary, yes.
And what did you hear?
There were two parts to it. I'm not sure whether it's the same time, but I remember that there was conversation about him being a bit strange and being at Heathrow Airport and then collecting a whole load of trolleys into a long line and putting them away, which is very unusual behaviour. And the second was when he got out of a car when he was being driven and went into, I think it was a charismatic church, and made some very inappropriate comments to people who were there.
Racist comments?
Yes.
Very racist.
Very racist comments, yeah.
Was that when he was being driven home from the SDS safe house?
It's a possibility.
And what was your reaction to that?
I was quite shocked about that. As you might imagine, it's very unusual behaviour, extraordinary behaviour.
And what was the reaction of your colleagues?
Well, disbelief, some hilarity, I think.
Why hilarity?
It's such an extraordinary thing for a senior manager to do. It didn't seem real.
And so could you describe to us in more detail the form the hilarity took?
I think people were laughing at the absurdity of the events that were reported.
In how much detail were events circulating?
And the fact of his arrest and the fact of the incident, as far as I know, we knew briefly about it. And it was only later on that I discovered what had happened.
In terms of knowledge of just how racist Potter had been, was that known?
I'm not entirely sure we knew the words used, but certainly racial abuse towards people of colour was what was described, yes.
And some elements of sexual harassment as well, trying to kiss women.
Didn't know that.
And did it become common knowledge that the way that that was dealt with ultimately was a medical discharge for Potter?
he was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance in the brain. That's right, and I think he resigned rather than was discharged. I'm not entirely sure, and then went to work in another role.
What was your manager's response to this incident?
It was reported to us, but how do you mean? What were they?
I'm just asking.
How they were referring?
You were there. I'm asking what their reaction was.
I'm struggling to think what that was. I remember that we talked about it.
Did they react with hilarity?
I don't think so. No.
At that stage, were any of you trained to recognise and avoid sexism and racism?
I certainly was. I mean, others probably, yes.
Was anything done to reinforce the message that it's unacceptable?
I think my training was, what was it called? It was a training school. I forget the name that they called it, but it was to do with how to behave certainly with minority groups, more than sexism, I think.
That's not my question. Did your managers do anything to reinforce that training as a result of this incident?
I'm trying to say you're presupposing that there was training that everyone had, that they were reinforcing, and I'm trying to remember what sort of training I had and whether they would have reinforced it, because the training I had was at training school. There might have been some when I was undertaking some police training as a trainer, but I don't remember specifically training in this area at all within Special Branch.
I can make it easy for you. Did your managers do anything to address Potter's racism?
The issue for me is that the fact that his racism was a mental health issue and it wasn't a specific...
Could you answer the question, please? Did your managers do anything in response to Potter's racism to convey the message that racism was not acceptable?
I think we were just all shocked about what had happened, to be fair. And you're asking me, did the managers address the racist comments specifically in something that they said in the team? And that's no, they didn't.
Can I come back to the question of hilarity?
Yeah.
What form did that take?
Sort of incomprehensible. This is ridiculous. It's a sense of what on earth is going on.
Stephen Lawrence was murdered on the 22nd of April 1993 whilst you were serving in the SDS.
Yes.
Do you recall the event?
I do.
It was a very high-profile murder, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
What was said about it at the time in the safe house?
It wasn't really my area. I had some connection purely in the fact that the anarchists I was knocking around with were going to the protests. So in terms of the case itself, I knew it from beforehand. The appalling racist attacks were just awful. We're all aware of that.
It's not quite my question. I'm asking about what discussion was there about Stephen's murder in the safe houses?
I'm finding it hard to answer that question directly because I'm just trying to think of the knowledge that we had at the time. I don't remember anything unpleasant or negative. It was all just a dreadful murder. I think we were more concerned about the competence of the officers investigating, if I remember rightly. But, I mean, I would be guessing here. It's difficult to remember.
Do you recall hearing about any tasking or intelligence requirements for any of the undercover officers arising from the attack on Stephen Lawrence and Dwayne Brooks?
I imagine officers in those areas in the groups that wanted to ride alongside the tragedy and use it for their political ends would have been briefed. Yes, I'm pretty sure we did have discussions about that sort of thing.
And what were the intelligence requirements?
I think we were trying to identify those groups who wanted to utilise the tragedy as a clarion call for their own actions, either for recruitment or for getting involved in street protest.
As I think we've had quite a lot of evidence in the past, the SDS were interested in groups which might seek, as you would see it, to exploit this sort of event.
That's right, yes.
And that would include, wouldn't it, an interest in activists who might be surrounding the family?
Correct.
Can you recall any intelligence requirements or taskings about that?
It wasn't something that was my area, frankly. I would imagine those that were looking at groups like the SWP would have had taskings, yes.
Can you recall anything specific?
No, I can't, not specifically, but it would make sense.
Can you recall any mention of Stephen's family?
Only in terms of how to protect them from the radical groups that wanted to politicise their tragedy.
And what was said on that topic?
Again, it was about groups like the SWP who wanted to politicise it and turn it into a cause célèbre.
And what was the SDS going to do about that?
The object was to identify those groups that wished to exploit the tragedy.
Did anyone say anything about obtaining intelligence that might be detrimental to the family?
Absolutely not.
You sure about that?
As far as I can remember, I certainly wasn't aware of anything like that. But to denigrate the family, you mean?
Yes.
No.
Or, as the allegation is, to smear the Lawrence?
No, absolutely not. No.
A lot of the answers you've given me are to the effect you're struggling to recall things. You've been very definite about that. Why?
It's just a horrendous thing that happened. It's awful. And I can remember it. I can remember it really well. And the whole thing, that the police investigation was not adequate, the long battle for the family to get justice, it was just, that was of that era. It was just a horrible thing to see. And what was worse for us is to see some of the groups that we were involved in were trying to gain capital out of the tragedy.
I'm focusing on the period particularly in the months after the murder.
Yes.
Why are you so definite that there was no mention of smearing the Lawrences?
I remember none of that.
Did you hear any discussion on that or any similar topic at any time?
Sorry, could you be a bit more
Did you hear any discussion about smearing the Lawrences or any similar topic at any time?
No.
As I'm sure you can imagine, this issue is very important to Stephen's family and to Dwayne Brooks to know what happened.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you can assist the inquiry with on this topic?
But who wouldn't have sympathy for the family and their tragedy? To think that we would do anything inimical to the family is faintly, well, surprising is the least comment I would make.
HN86, did you ever hear him say anything racist?
No.
Or do anything racist?
No.
At the Safe House meetings during your 4 and a bit years in the SDS, was there ever any racist banter?
It's entirely possible. I don't remember any cases of it.
Any racist comments?
Not that I remember, no.
Might there have been?
Possible, yeah.
Probable?
Knowing the characters that were there at the time, it'd be a surprise, but like any sort of canteen culture, I suppose, if you've been dealing with a particular person and they've really irritated you, you might say something which would be off colour. That's what it was like in those days.
Racist jokes?
I don't think racist jokes. It would have been sort of negative comment about an individual that you would particularly fallen out with or had caused you grief.
Racially offensive comments?
It's possible. It's possible. I don't remember this, but it's possible.
Sir, I'm about to move to another topic. Would
Yes.
that be a convenient time?
Certainly. We normally have a break of 15 minutes after about an hour and a half to enable the transcribers to have a well-deserved rest. Same for you.
Mr. Coles, anarchists.
Yes.
You are beginning to report fairly early on in your report on a number of anarchist groupings.
Yes.
For example, we have got first report about the anarchists at 121 Railton Road, dated the 21st of May, where you report on a cafe film show being screened in conjunction with the Troops Out movement. I'd just like to understand, please, in your own words, to what extent was this just getting established in order to pursue an animal rights deployment with an anarchist flavour, and to what extent it was for the actual value of the intelligence you were eliciting about places like 121 Railton Road.
Could you just tell me the date of that report again?
That report is, we can bring it up for you so you can have a look. It's Volume 5, tab C17, 22086.
May 91.
If we could just expand the text, please.
Yes.
Could you help us with what the purpose of infiltrating 121 Railton Road was?
It was really sort of the hub of anarchist activity in Brixton. I mean, I knew it before then when I was a PC, because it featured in drugs raids in the area and so on, so it was a fairly familiar place. It was really a base for a lot of different anarchist groups to establish themselves. It had a meeting room, and it had this cafe on Fridays when people would be served food, generally which we'd rescued from the skips down at Covent Garden. I seem to remember that was a very regular thing that we did. And it was establishing myself within the general South London anarchist movement. Of course, a lot of my early experience in in Brixton and in Southwark was around supporting squatters. So that was really how it started. And of course, this was a squatted shop. And then being involved with the Brixton Hunt Subs, it was a great way to meet up with fellow Brixton Hunt Subs who were generally anarchists from the squatting community who used it. This was a bit of a surprise in that it was a Troops Out event, because I wasn't targeted in that area. When I saw it, I thought I would go along just to see how many people turned up to the cafe and then the talk afterwards.
Thank you. In similar vein, if we go to the next tab, please, tab 18, 22087. This is dated the 7th of June, 1991. We understand it to be based on your intelligence.
Yes.
And it's a report about the setting up of a new anarchist bookshop and information centre at 56A Crampton Street. I'll give you a moment to refresh your memory, but it's going to
I remember this one, that's fine.
it's going to be the same question. What was the purpose of reporting on the setting up of this bookshop?
Effectively, it was a money-generating exercise. Certainly the Fair Shares Cooperative Whole Food side was run by the Brixton Hunt Sabs, and it was one that brought in money for them. And then the bookshop at the back had, from what I remember, a lot of thrash music was for sale and a variety of publications, and it was run by members of the Brixton Hunt Sabs who were part of that collective.
And so, which is the more important, reporting per se on 56A or getting an introduction to the Brixton Hunt saboteurs?
I'd say both, because they weren't just about Hunt Sabs. That was just part of the activity of these two areas, which were sort of hubs, if you like, for the wider anarchist community.
And what is it about the anarchists that you understood to be of policing interest?
Criminality, hatred of authority, resistance towards democratic processes, the whole shebang, really. They were pretty much lively class war activists.
There is mention in your post-operative debrief, we can take that document down now, of the East Dulwich against the poll tax group.
Right.
However, we can only find one mention of this in your reporting, which is a report about an individual from April 1992. Would it be fair for us to take from that that in fact you didn't have much to do with the East Dulwich against the poll tax group?
I think I said in one of my reports that I was involved in around 55 different groups, so I counted them all up once. And some of them were, it's a bit of an aside, but you get 3 anarchists together, you get 4 groups organised, and they all fight with each other and collapse and turn into something else. So often people set up a group for a particular function. It didn't take off, people didn't follow it, and it died a death. But generally, the groups were set up for a variety of specific protests, and they either survived or fell, depending on the support of the wider community. Some of them existed for a long period of time. East Dulwich against the poll tax, I can't remember very much about it.
Well, the campaign against the poll tax
It's huge.
was huge, successful and sustained.
Absolutely, yeah.
The post-operative debrief suggests that was your way into 56A and 121 Railton Road. Is that in fact right?
It's possible there was one meeting called and I found it was advertised and I went and I then found fellow anarchists that I could then become close to, yeah.
As you've mentioned, 55 groups you tottered up. Why so many?
I think I explained that when an anarchist group gets together and they want to run a campaign, they set up a group name and sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. When I was first establishing myself in South London, I didn't quite know all the different radical groups and those that were legitimate pressure groups and other protest groups. So anything that had the word animal in it, I think in South London I went to have a look at to see what it was. And some were entirely legitimate, and I soon left once I'd realised what was going on. Really establishing myself as someone who was concerned about animal rights, but looking always for the opportunity to go towards the more radical, the more extreme, and the potentially criminal people within it.
Because your reporting is far from confined to anarchists.
Absolutely, yeah, it's very wide.
What was the thread? If there's a common thread to be found, what is it?
I'm looking for the individuals who are likely to form effectively an ALF cell, or who already had them or had the capacity for doing that.
And there are 2 components to that, are there? Building up your credibility and then eliciting the intelligence.
Yeah, it's mainly looking at which individuals turn up at events and to see that those which seem to be on that sort of wavelength so that I could then befriend them.
And to what extent were people talking about the commission of ALF actions in terms specific enough to identify individual perpetrators?
Never in that specific terms. You're always looking for someone who had something about them, about how angry they were about a particular issue, how motivated they were, and whether they had some sort of sense of capacity. You get a feeling that that person's organised, competent, capable, likely to carry out something. So you're always trying to draw on your subjective analysis of people's individual behaviours about where they might be going in the future.
Lucy the dog.
Oh, yeah.
When did you get her?
When?
Yes, please.
It was post involvement with hunt sabbing. I think 93. I don't know if I reported the date, but around about that sort of time.
Sorry,
I think 1993, but...
when in 93?
You'll probably be able to help me on this one. The reason I got Lucy was because I befriended people who were running a particular organisation called Tail Ends. And one of them was of particular interest that I was asked to target, befriend, and find out some information from them about an incident that they'd been in prison for and had been released.
So at some point in 1993, you get Lucy as part and parcel of inveigling your way into a group of animal activists who are of interest to you.
Just a couple, just two people, yeah.
For the purpose of the job, basically.
Exactly, yes, that's right.
Can we look at, in Volume 1, tab A2, 735554. This is a summary of an interview between you and Operation Hearn officers.
Yes.
If you look down the page, about 3/4 of the way down, targeting strategy, nothing signed, had dog Lucy to put off women.
That's a very interesting note. I'm not sure that... I had Lucy, yes. Specifically, I got a lovely dog because I had to become friends with these two individuals. The effect of having Lucy is that I could transfer my affection to her, and so she was my source of affection. So I guess that's what I mean by put off women. But that's a very odd combination of having a dog to put off women. She wasn't aggressive at all.
You have told us just now
Yeah.
that you got the dog for the job
Yeah.
to advance your infiltration of two specific people associated with tail ends.
Yes.
Did you or did you not get Lucy to put off women?
That wasn't the reason to get the dog, but I think it might have been the effect.
The people you were infiltrating were animal lovers,
Yes.
dog lovers.
Yes.
Jessica, for example,
Yes.
was even by the standards of the animal rights movement, a particularly strong dog lover,
Yes,
wasn't she?
that's right, yeah.
Having a dog in the animal rights movement was not going to repel anybody, was it?
I think that what I'm saying in that particular... Well, it's a note and interpretation which is a bit odd. I had the dog Lucy, yes. Did she make me more interesting as a person? I don't know. I was able to transfer my affections to her, and we were like a couple. Often people mention that. In fact, most animal rights people that were settled had companion animals of one sort or another, and often many of them.
Good for your cover.
Precisely, but it was predominantly, I mean, the reason for the dog was to build up a relationship with the two individuals I was tasked to investigate for a very specific purpose over a short period of time. But the dog stayed rather longer than that.
Transferring your attention in 1993 from whom?
I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
You said that you were transferring your affection to Lucy. I want to know where you were transferring your affection from.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, transferring my affection. I'm probably using the wrong word then. Displaying my affection, perhaps that's what I meant.
Is the reality that you were trying to portray yourself as seeking to avoid women when you spoke to Operation Hearn?
You couldn't avoid, but avoiding getting involved in relationships that might become more personal. Yeah, I mean, that certainly was what I was trying to do at all times.
And you gave them a reason which was false.
I think it's a misinterpretation of something that I said. To say that Lucy was there to put off women, I think that's odd. As you say, it's unlikely in the animal rights movement that having a dog would put off somebody. I transferred my affection to the, I've said that again, displayed my affection towards Lucy.
Can we go now to the Brixton Hunt Saboteurs Group? We can take this document down. If we can call up from volume 5, document 744584. This is the first report in time about Brixton Hunt Saboteurs Group. It is dated the 16th of July 1991. We believe it to be based on your intelligence. Can we have a look at paragraphs 2 and 3, please? The Brixton Hunt Saboteurs have not taken part in animal rights activity recently following their eviction from their squatted premises in Sudbourne Road. They have now moved into a former creche at Privacy and are now planning to sabotage hunts during the 1991-2 season. The Hunt Saboteurs will be holding a party at their new squat on Friday, the 26th of July 1991, to renew ties with local activists. They hope to ameliorate their current lack of funds by holding a street collection in Lambeth on the 3rd of August, using pictures organised by SLAA. On the 8th of August 1991, from 7:30 at the Voltaire Rooms, Clapham Bath, Clapham Manor Street, BHSG will be holding an open meeting to recruit new members for the forthcoming season. Can you help us, by this stage, your first report on the BHSG, how much contact have you had with them and how have you got to the stage of being able to report this information?
I'll have a stab at this. I can't guarantee it's entirely accurate because I'm not working from memory here, but very early on, I was used as a driver. They were short of drivers, and they had a whole load of new members. Actually, that might be post this particular event. I had been involved in assisting people who were squatting, moving their stuff out when they were evicted, and helping them to move into other places that they'd squatted. I'm guessing I've built a relationship by now with one or two of the organisers, and they're just telling me stuff. That would be my guess.
And can we fairly take it that what you've done in the 7 months that you've been deployed is, 6 or 7 months you've been deployed, is follow your targeting strategy to the letter? You've done the peace movement, you've built up your credentials in the anarchist and other groups, and you're now moving into animal rights proper.
Yes, I don't think it was linear like that. There was always contact going backwards and forwards, so it was a bit of a blend, but I think, yes, you're right.
And when did the hunting season and associated sabotage season run from and to?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't know when the hunting season is.
If it was to be suggested November to May, would you disagree?
I wouldn't. It's always in the winter, but I couldn't give you the exact start and end times.
Would it be fair to say that the Brixton Hunt Saboteurs Group comprised of 2 distinct parts, the counter-culture squatters and the rest?
I don't think it's separated like that. You had those that were happy to go out to sab. Some were out there for the animals and some were out there to attack the toffs, if you like, to carry out class war attacks. It was a handy vehicle for both sides to go out there together in a group and get involved in what they wanted to get involved in. They weren't actually members of the HSA, they were just out there to... I had a lovely T-shirt, which I still have, which has what they stand for. The BHS is the Bumpkin Harassment Squad, as they were known, and that was really the sort of thing that they lived up to.
They had a reputation within hunt sabotage circles, didn't they?
They did, justly deserved.
I'd like a flavour, please, of behaviours that you personally witnessed
Yes.
that either reinforced or detracted from that reputation.
Right, I can give you a couple of examples that I remember precisely. 2 hunts. There was one, I think it was near Reading, or at least there was a hunter had employed a club security guard to protect the hunt. It had got physical. and a Hunt saboteur had their arm broken or wrist broken as a result of a confrontation between them and the security guard. And then a regional hit was called, I think, by HSA, and Brixton came along to cause trouble. They located the security guard who ran into a farmhouse. They then tooled up with stones and sticks and smashed all the windows in the farmhouse. A police car turned up with 2 officers in. The SABs had masked up by then. They told the officers in no uncertain terms, go away or we'll GBH you. And the officers left with the tail between their legs. It was quite an intimidating, dangerous thing for them to have appeared at. They didn't have the support that you'd have in London, and they were under risk, and they got out of the way. So that was very, very extreme. I've also...
Just before you move on.
Yes, sorry, go on.
What happened to the security guard?
He went into the farmhouse and he was locked in. And they intimidated the police officers. They drove away, and then they decided, discretion being the better part of valour, they'd leave.
Thank you. Forgive me. Carry on, please.
Okay. Oh, gosh, there are quite a few examples. I think there is film of some of their behaviour in the Beeman de Silva documentary when they came along. I think that's still available on YouTube to see when there's a confrontation between the Surrey Union and them. They'd surrounded a farmyard. I'm not sure whether it was the Hunt. I don't think it was the Hunt's base at all. It wasn't the kennels. And they're throwing a load of sticks over the top, and then someone on the other side has a big stick and whacks one of them that's on the wall, and then it all starts over again. So there's a fair bit of physical confrontation. I can remember a rough shoot that was disrupted when everyone ran in front of the guns, and they used to have a whole pile of walking sticks that were cut and left under the seats, and so you grabbed them out of the beast, which was the large Land Rover, and you'd arm yourself with a stout walking stick so you wouldn't fall over, but it was clearly with 2 purposes in mind, that if you needed it, you could assault people. There are a number of incidents. For example, there was one occasion I remember a huntsman was in pink, were very much on their own, and they were riding down the road towards the SAB vehicle. They all got out and charged at the rider and the horse with the intent to pull them off the horse and beat them up, but they saw the threat and got away. Also, they once stole a hound from the Hunt during a foggy period, grabbed it and took it back to the squat. The examples I remember. There are others, but those are the ones I was witness to.
To what extent was the violence that you witnessed coming from Hunt saboteurs, provoked and in self-defence, and to what extent did it fall outside the ambit of self-defence?
They were mostly the initiators. I mean, there were times, when I mentioned about the Beeman de Silva episode, you can see that, I probably won't use the name, but there was an individual who was sitting on the wall who was whacked behind with a stick that came from a Hunt supporter, and that created a reaction with stones being thrown into the yard. So you could say that that was provoked, but whether, I don't think that would be self-defence, but...
To be clear, you said they were mostly the instigators.
Not always, but mostly, yeah.
Who was they?
The Hunt Sabs, yeah.
Going to show you 2 contrasting reports now.
Okay.
If we take this down, first of all, from Volume 5, Tab 82, 730959, please. Thank you. This is a report which, again, we think is yours, 4th of March 1992, about a member of the HSA who's 6'2", slim, long black and unkempt hair with a large silver hoop earring in the left ear. We're keeping the gentleman's name private, but that may assist you. I'm interested in the text. Privacy is a dedicated saboteur who regularly engages in violent assaults on Hunt supporters. He intends to continue his harassment of prominent members of the Surrey Union and Old Surrey and Burstow Hunts, and will further his activities by stealing plants from the gardens of such people to stock his garden at home. One of his targets is known to be Privacy, President of the Hunt Association. Can you help us with where on the spectrum behaviour like this was within the Brixton Hunt Saboteurs group? And I don't mind
really
whether or not this person is a member is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I just want to know where on the spectrum would this sort of behaviour be?
I think you'd have to separate out, I suppose, the class warrior type from quite a lot of the hangers-on, the sort of newly recruited students, those that were just coming along for the ride, if you like, who were not like this. Individuals generally who have been sabbing a lot, maybe have been injured by the hunt, maybe had an ongoing issue with that particular hunt, and not hugely common, but there were individuals like that.
If we take that down and from a different perspective, can we have up from volume 7, tab C225, 746502? Thank you. This is again an up-to-date and information performer on a hunt saboteur, 15th of February 1993. If we look, he's described as 5'11" and stout.
I know who this is. Yeah.
Yeah, if we could look at the text on the bottom of the page running over to the next page. Last weekend, Privacy was arrested in Hastings with fellow activist Privacy while daubing a butcher's window in the town with paint. He used a false name and address at the police station, but personal items bearing his real name were found at Privacy's home by police when it was searched following their arrest. He is hopeful that Hastings police will not realise that he has used a false name on this occasion, since he hopes to conceal that he is currently on bail for causing criminal damage to a window at McDonald's in Brixton, and therefore hopes to avoid a greater punishment or refusal of the court to grant bail before trial. As a result of the arrest, Privacy will not take part in animal rights activity of any sort for a while, at least until the court cases are behind him, but will concentrate on college work, an area he has neglected of late. Privacy's personal circumstances have also deteriorated. Privacy, alias Privacy, left the flat she shared with Privacy and Privacy following the allegation that Privacy. As a result, Privacy moved into the flat on his release from Brixton Prison, where he has been held on remand for offences of serious assault. He is very aggressive and has a fearsome reputation for violence, so much so that he has been dissuaded from attending hunt meets as a saboteur. Privacy then began to henpeck Privacy to such an extent that he started to spend long periods away from the flat. Most recently, Privacy has begun a sexual relationship with Privacy, one of the Brixton crusties. It would seem, therefore, that a relationship with Privacy is teetering on the brink of collapse. All of these personal circumstances have certainly affected Privacy, and it seems likely that in the near future he will move to a new address. His commitment to ALF action nevertheless remains as strong as ever. Can we take it from this that there were limits and that the hunt saboteur community did not want very aggressive, violent people on their sabotages?
I think the HSA had a particular policy, and they were rather more controlled as those sort of people like the Brixton Hunt Subs who weren't members of that and had a different idea about what hunt stabbing was. There were some people who were problem cases who were very difficult, people who had their own particular personal crises and as a result were not the best human beings you might possibly find and who caused problems. And there was often that fear about having people who were completely dysregulated in terms of their behaviour to be around. But there were people with mental health problems and with drug problems that were part as well. So you did often have someone who was dysregulated within the group, and if you could avoid them getting involved in direct action where it would bring everyone else into difficulty with the police, then you did.
But would the reality be that a successful hunt sabotage was one in which there was no violence and the hunt was stopped through entirely lawful means?
That would be what the HSA would prefer, absolutely, but it didn't always happen if you were in a group that wasn't HSA aligned.
Can you help us with whether the intelligence on the man in question about him using a false identity in court was used at all?
Was used how, sorry?
To catch him using a false identity and misleading the court?
I don't know. I would have just reported what I heard, and that would be for the desk to organise.
And there would be considerations of operational security before
Indeed, yeah.
using
It'd
that
be out
sort
my
of
hands, yeah.
intelligence.
Yeah.
And you've, as I've read out, reported on this gentleman's sex life, haven't you? Why
About
was
his
that?
relationships, yeah.
One readily sees why intelligence that a man is misleading the courts or is very violent, so violent that he's been asked not to participate in hunt sabotages has some policing value. But why his sex life?
It goes to the nature of the organisation and the, what would I call it, the quick change of relationships and connections between people who are friends and then not friends and so on. It was pretty irregular.
Can we take that down now? And again, on the moving from how the hunt saboteurs behaved to how the other side of the coin, the hunters, behaved. Can we have from volume 1, tab A1A, 743479, please? This is your 6-month post-off debrief. As I've understood that, that's a debrief 6 months after you have withdrawn from your deployment. Is that right?
About that, yes.
If we could go to page 5, please. And we could look at paragraph 14. This is about your concerns and fears. I feared, and I should say, this is, you answer in response to a series of questions.
That's right, yes.
I feared serious assault from terriermen or being shot by irate farmers more than anything else during my tour. Now I hope my cover is enough to protect me from hostile inquiry from my former comrades. My current fear is of being compromised now my tour is over. I know there are activists I mixed with who would cheerfully attempt to take my life if it was confirmed to them that I had been a police officer spying on them.
Yes.
In relation to the first sentence, is that a fair assessment of your greatest fear on deployment?
Yeah, I think that was the least control. There were a couple of areas, a couple of hunts where there were, there were 7 brothers who delighted in attacking Sabs and were really quite violent. I was very concerned about being caught. I had a long conversation with one of the individuals under Cypher about this very particular thing when we were together and we were sort of caught and managed to get away without any violence before it happened. So that was completely uncontrollable. When I was with the group, we were all very much together and all very much looking after each other, so I didn't fear them as much as I did that. Being shot by irate farmers, there was a particular case, I can't remember exactly where, that was reported about shots being discharged over the heads of Sabs, but I'm afraid I can't remember what it was. But that, thinking that you would be trying to confront a farmer on their land and then firing at you was something that did come up. But again, those were uncontrollable things that might have happened to me that I couldn't control, whereas being part of the organisation, I didn't fear their violence towards me unless I was compromised.
And there were deaths in the course of hunt sabotages, weren't there?
3 that I can remember, yes.
And for...
But to be fair, those weren't to do with violent attacks, but it was largely to do with falling under the wheels, moving vehicles and so on, and jumping in front of a horse, I think.
For someone following the HSA line to go to a hunt sabotage with some of the characters on the hunt side must have been a terrifying experience.
Well, what the HSA policy was very clear, that they would be as lawful as they possibly could be, but individuals having the experience of being confronted by some hunt members who are physical and aggressive towards them did turn them into a more aggressive individual. So we are all a product of our experiences, and some of them, while they might have wanted to toe the line, were very able and robust at looking after themselves.
As to the more physically robust and those who might be pursuing a second agenda of class war, if it was suggested that even they were cautious about initiating violence but would not be shy of standing up for themselves or retaliating, would you agree that's a fair proposition or not?
I'm sorry, I missed the subject of that question. I do apologise. But which group?
If it was about the more robust individuals and
Okay.
about those who are pursuing, for example, a class war agenda, robust and with that sort of agenda, would it be fair to say that what they did was not initiate violence but stand up for themselves and retaliate?
Well, they would do that, but if they had the chance to get away with attacking someone, then they would.
Whilst we're with this document, I'm going to digress onto another
Okay.
matter. If you could just go over the page to paragraph 18, please. I was not tempted into drug taking since it was not a new experience for me to be in a drug taking culture. The psychology department at Swansea University in the 78 to 81 period was almost universally into mind-altering substances. Is that a reference to your own undergraduate studies?
It's a reference to a particular openness and availability of certain, certainly for cannabis at that time. I remember one of the drug dealers set up in the corner of the college bar and used to sell there. It was widely available.
I did, however, use cannabis in role because it was necessary to become part of the Brixton anarchist scene. Since leaving, I have given up smoking, and if anyone thinks cannabis is addictive, they need their heads examined.
Yes.
Can I ask you whether you were given any guidance by your managers about taking controlled substances in your undercover role?
We did have a conversation about alcohol and drugs as well. Yes, that's right.
And what was the guidance that you were given?
The verbal guidance I remember was don't drive under the influence. So if you have drunk or if you have smoked a joint, then make sure that it's out of your system before you drive and come home.
So no prohibition on taking controlled substances?
Not that I remember, no.
Being careful of restriction orders.
Yes.
Who gave you that advice, please?
H86.
Can we go to subparagraph 3? Shoplifting is a tradition in the Brixton anarchist scene from multinationals and dodgy businesses only. It was necessary to break the law on a number of occasions, and it is silly to pretend otherwise. Can I take it that you shoplifted?
I was involved in shoplifting, that's right, yes. Yes, either as a getaway driver, that's bizarre to think of it now. Did I steal anything myself? I don't think I did. I don't remember taking part in that. But the case I was involved in was was stealing vegetables from Covent Garden out of the skips, which is a technical theft of space of a bin.
Did you have any Did you get any guidance from your managers before you deployed about shoplifting?
No, not specifically shoplifting, no.
About committing crimes in your undercover identity in general?
Yeah, sort of low-level stuff was part of your scene, so it was expected you'd be involved. If you had any prior notice, you could warn the office that it might take place, but sometimes you just had to do it.
Did you inform your managers that you were shoplifting or conspiring or participating however you...
Conspiring is a big word, which means you just stop off, someone goes into a multinational and decides to nick something and then comes out with it and we share it in the van. That's the sort of level we're talking about here.
Did you tell your managers you were doing that?
Probably not. Probably not.
Why didn't you tell them?
Not really important.
There is a qualitative difference between, say, fly posting and shoplifting, because the latter is an offence of dishonesty, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Did you not think it was appropriate to tell your managers that you were involved in crimes of dishonesty?
I would have done, yes, but I'm just trying to... If I set the scene, you turn up to a car park and say I was driving my van or driving the Beast or the Pig, the two vehicles that Brixton Hunt Sabs had. Occasionally I drove one of them. And someone will go out and do something and come back, and then you'd see someone sharing something in the back of the van. My assumption is it was shoplifted. They may have bought it, I don't know. But you're asking about the chain of evidence here, which is for a very minor offence, and I may not be able to guarantee that the person that stole it is the person holding it. So,
well, what I'm asking is, did you tell your managers you were involved in this sort of activity?
I may have said generally that's what they do, yeah, absolutely. But in terms of specifics, it's unlikely.
There certainly comes a point in this document where you do tell managers that you have been shoplifting, if I use that in a loose sense.
A loose sense, yes.
What was their reaction?
Sorry, which issue are we talking about?
And shoplifting, you've put it very frankly
Yes.
in this post-operative debrief sometime in the middle of 1995. What is the reaction to saying that you've done that?
Oh, I see. No, what I said was it's necessary to break the law on a number of occasions. It's silly to pretend otherwise, and that was what I was talking about, nicking the veg out of Covent Garden, which was what I was specifically involved in.
What was the manager's reaction to the fact you've been involved in crimes of dishonesty?
Let's be precise about it. There were 4 individuals arrested for it. It was the great... The 4 we celebrated at the 1-to-1 centre, and no charges were brought because it was decided it wasn't theft in the end. So that's... I explained what happened, and I told the story. That's what happened.
And what was your manager's reaction?
I would guess it was a bit of a smile about it, I would guess.
Small beer?
Very small beer, yeah.
Can we take that down now and look at some of your reporting, some further reporting on the BHSG? Can we have up, first of all, from paragraph 5, tab 79, 744640. This is a report about a hunt sabotage in the New Forest.
Yes.
It says various hunt saboteur groups have communicated with each other and have decided to organise a national hit on a hunt in the New Forest on the Saturday, the 22nd of February. And in hunt sabotage terms, that's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, there was either a regional hit or a national hit. It generally was because someone had been seriously injured by a hunt, and it would be retribution by a whole variety of SABs from all over the country coming to completely close down the hunt.
It is known that those hunt SABs from London who might have been expected to attend and cause problems will not take part, as they will be participating in the Roland Adams demonstration in London that day.
Yeah.
Did you go to the Roland Adams demonstration that day?
I don't remember.
Might you have done?
It's a possibility, but I'd be surprised if I did. I don't remember it.
Why would you have done if you might have done?
It would be because I was part of the group.
Can we take that down now, please? A general question on the squatting, counterculture, class war side of the BHSG. How organised were they?
it's almost the wrong thing to say that an anarchist is organised. It's very difficult to describe it, but there was some organisation around. In particular, individuals were quite canny and knew how to sort things out. But there was always a little bit of sort of unreliability, and sudden crises would happen because people weren't particularly well organised.
Would it be fair to say that it's not so much that anarchists are disorganised, it's that they organise in a different, non-hierarchical way?
They'd like you to believe that, but the reality is somewhat different, yeah.
You would say more disorderly?
Well, I would say
More
they live a
disorganised.
precarious life in squats, and sometimes circumstances take over, you get kicked out, and all of a sudden you're on the street. And drug abuse tends to have some effect on your ability to reason.
Did the Brixton Hunt Saboteurs group have official posts? A chair?
Oh gosh, no, none of that sort of. But someone would sort of start off something, and other people would join it. But the practical effect was that individuals who were well organised tended to take the lead.
So it didn't have an equipment officer?
I seem to remember there was a report about it. I think I mentioned that role. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm asking you about that because
Yeah.
AFJ, the person who you reported to be an equipment officer, has said that he wasn't and that there was no such, the implication being there's no such post. He may have been involved in hunt sabotage and may have been prominent, but it's quite wrong to portray the BHSG as having that level of formality. Would you accept that?
Yeah, I think someone would take on a role. I'm probably using a policing term to describe what he did, which was at that time to be looking after kit, like the radios and things like that.
I'm going to move away from the BHSG now to Alarm Earth First UK. If we could have up from volume 5, tab 31, 22095. As you said, your reporting isn't divided in a linear way.
No.
There's some overlap. This is a report from the 11th of September 1991. And if we look at paragraph 2, I'll give you a moment to refresh your memory, but it's a report about plans to disrupt a fringe meeting at the Labour Party conference by Alarm and Earth First UK.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you 2 more reports before I come to my questions. If we could take that down now. From volume 6, tab C142, could we have 739626? If we go to the main report, thank you. This is a telephone, I think a telephone report. If not, it's a memorandum to Commander TO20 from the Chief Superintendent. It's dated, it's about an event. It's dated the 8th of May, about an event a week later, disruption of traffic on the 15th of May 1992, and it's about a proposal to disrupt traffic in central London. I'll give you a moment to refresh your memory.
Thank you. That's fine. Happy to continue.
Yeah, I'm being told the next page is the event pro forma.
Right.
For the event itself, and it's worth going to that, not least because towards the bottom, event advertised, it says by word of mouth at Earth First gathering in Brighton during the weekend of the 18th to the 20th of April. Is this intelligence you reported?
I'm pretty. Oh, it's Carmageddon. Yes, sometimes. Alarm was one I was struggling with, but it's Carmageddon. Yeah, that's me. I guess that's in the Pig and Paradise pub.
And you You've got the intelligence by being on the ground, have you?
Being part of the, I was a founder member of Earth First UK, so that's how I got that.
What consideration was given to taking part in founding a political campaigning group?
Sorry, say again?
What thought was given to playing a founding role in a political campaigning group?
Founding is a very grand word for just being there when it had its first meeting.
Was there any discussion with your managers about that?
Yes.
And what did they say?
It was part of my change to my deployment when environmentalist issues started to arise so that I could cover them.
I'm taking from that answer that there was a management interest on getting on the front foot of understanding what was going on.
I think so, yeah. When normally, if something new turned up that had a potential for disruption, disorder, then we would try to report and become involved with it, yes.
And the
It needed to have that, sorry to interrupt you, it needed to have that anarchist element to it for it to qualify to be part of my bag or be within South London.
Thank you. And the nature of the event was going to be named Carmageddon.
That's right, yes.
If we go to, in the same bundle, sir, to tab 146, 739625. And we go to page 4, please. It says, received from a secret and reliable source. And if we go to the middle paragraph, the latest campaign organised by Privacy involves Earth First activists with members of London Greenpeace, London Green Party and the London Cycling Campaign in the Carmageddon campaign. The 4 groups have formed an umbrella organisation, Reclaim the Streets, and under the leadership of Privacy and London Green Party activist Shane Collins, it held an international day of traffic action on Friday, the 15th of May.
Yes.
So is it right that this was the first RTS event?
Probably, yeah, probably.
What role did you play in the setting up of Reclaim the Streets?
I was just part of Earth First UK, and I don't think I took any part in organising anything.
What was your manager's response to your reporting on the Carmageddon event and the genesis of Earth First and RTS?
Difficult to remember anything precisely. I would guess because I continued to report on it, they were happy for me to continue reporting on them.
And to what extent, without identifying any specific sources, to what extent was Special Branch able to obtain intelligence about this sort of disruption from other sources?
Yes, it's difficult to answer that one without straying into difficult areas, I agree. Largely by word of mouth.
Could we take that down, please? Can we move on to the South London Animal Aid? 1st of October 1991, Volume 5, tab C33, sir, 739531. And if we go to the report itself, please. This is dated the 1st of October 1991. The meat of the report is paragraphs 2 and 3. If we could have those blown up, please, and I will give you an opportunity to refresh your memory.
Yeah.
I get the impression from this report that by this stage you've actually had some prior involvement with South London Animal Aid, even though this is your first report about the group. Is that fair?
Yes, I was probably establishing myself. As I said, I think earlier, that anything in the South London that had animal in the title, I'd pop along and have a look at.
And if in the same file we now go to tab 52, 744618. This is a telephone message. It's from HN86 to the Chief Superintendent of Sea Squad, dated the 26th of November 1991. If we look at the main body of the text, first of all, please. The following information has been received from a secret and reliable source next Thursday, the 28th of November 1991, i.e. 2 days hence. Members of Brixton Hunt Saboteurs Group and South London Animal Aid intend to picket a circus which is performing that day in Collier's Wood, SW19. It is a circus in which animals take part. Whether or not there is any confrontation will depend largely on the attitude taken by the circus management. And if we go down to the manuscript text underneath, about 20 persons are expected to take part in the demonstration. A memo to be sent to TO20. Is this your reporting?
I guess so, yeah. I can't recall it directly.
It appears from the paperwork that you have come to hear about this planned protest and you are passing on intelligence about likely numbers, likely demeanour of people, and that is being passed on to TO20
Public order, yeah.
to assist them.
To see if they needed to deploy any staff there.
Is that typical of the sort of intelligence that you were able to provide on SLAA?
On everything, one of the things was, if any group is going to have a demonstration and there's a likelihood of there being confrontation, whether they're initiator or are victims of it, is to make sure that the operational side know that's going on, so if they can identify people that they can deploy to reduce that risk, they could. So yes, this was just a very common practice.
Would it be fair to say that SLAA was not itself, as an organisation, involved in wrongdoing?
No, not as an organisation. I was more concerned about any reaction that came from the circus folk that might have taken umbrage at them arriving and causing disorder.
And so can you help us with the purpose of infiltrating SLAA?
Originally it was to establish myself, but that's where I met one particular individual who took me straight into the ALF eventually. So it was just about finding someone. Most of the people in SLAA I thought were fine people who were legitimately protesting about animal welfare, and they were quite a respectable group, really.
A stepping stone?
Yeah, well, partly just to find out what they were like, because I didn't know at the time. I know they'd been reported on before, so I assumed that there were individuals there who went along who were more than just an archetypal, legitimate protester, but were keen to get involved, and so it proved. I connected to someone who was a particularly interesting person to me.
London Boots Action Group.
Yes.
Known colloquially as LBAG.
LBAG, yes.
November 1991. Could we look at Volume 5, Tab 51, 740284, please? If we go to the body of the report. Thank you. This is a report, 25th of November 1991. Paragraph 2 makes clear that this is the inaugural meeting of LBAG and was well attended.
Yes.
Do you recall the event?
Not specifically, no. I'm sure I was there, though.
Could we go to paragraph 3? I'll give you a moment to look at that, but essentially it's Mr. Gravett outlining that the campaigning activity is going to take the form of a series of pickets outside various branches of Boots,
Yes.
chemist in central London. That was the quintessential campaigning activity that LBAG undertook, wasn't it?
That's right, that was the regular picketing, yeah.
And it was a single-issue campaign focused on boots and its involvement with vivisection.
Yes, that's right.
And there would be, at these pickets, leafleting.
Yes.
And in terms of criminality, other than perhaps instances of obstructing the public highway, this is not an organisation that is in any way institutionally criminal, is it?
Of itself, no, but it was the most active animal rights group in London at the time, and a lot of people who went along, who would be ostensibly entirely law-abiding when they were taking part in that event, were also those that were prepared to do criminal activity. So it was the way that you could go out there regularly and meet up with your colleagues and protest lawfully, but also still be in contact with those who you knew that were involved in activities that were less than lawful. But at these particular events, it was always lawful.
The milieu in which you might meet people you were actually required to target.
Exactly, yes, exactly that.
Can we go to paragraph 7, please? After the break, ALF press officer Robin Webb spoke in guarded terms about the illegal activities of ALF activists and gave an interesting explanation of the Lucasade hoax. Webb stated that there was no ALF plot to contaminate Lucasade. However, because of ALF infiltration of the Animal Rights National Index, the police believe that a large-scale contamination was about to be perpetrated against Smith Kline Beecham, and thus several £1 million of the company's profit was lost due to the recall of their Lucasade product from retail outlets. He also mentioned that all of those activists arrested had since been released on police bail. Was what Mr. Webb is reported to have said at this meeting of particular interest to your managers?
Just reading that again, it's just classic Robin, the way he used to sort of talk, and he was a very, very good speaker and very engaging. I'm reporting what he said. I don't think that the Lucasade hoax was a hoax. I think it was real.
On what basis do you think it was real?
It's vague. I have vague memories of this taking place when I was on the desk, so I'm pretty sure that there were samples tested that were proven to be contaminated at the time. But I'm really stretching here. My memory isn't good.
Did you communicate that view to your managers?
Which view?
That it wasn't a hoax?
I think we knew it wasn't a hoax. I'm reporting what he said. You know, as I said, he's a very engaging, competent speaker, very good at, dare I say, rabble-rousing, probably.
The next phrase, however, because of ALF infiltration of the Animal Rights National Index, ARNI, did the assertion that the ALF had infiltrated ARNI cause you any concern?
No.
Why not?
Because it's rubbish.
How did you know it was rubbish?
Because it is clearly rubbish. Just knowing the structure of ARNI and yeah, it's Robin being Robin.
Did it elicit any interest from your managers that you'd report?
I can't remember. I mean, I submitted the report and it then wended its merry way to the relevant people.
Could we take this down, please, and have up from Volume 7, tab C210, 739789. If we go to the main body, thank you. This is an up-to-date and information proforma, dated the 10th of December 1992, so just over a year after the report we were just looking at.
Yeah.
What's particularly striking about it, as I'm sure you've already noticed, is it's about you.
Yes.
So, and if we go over the page to see who signed it, This has come from HN86, who at the time was the DCI of the
That's
SDS.
right, yeah.
So this report about you is going from the SDS to be filed.
Yes.
Why is a report about you being put into the filing system?
Well, normally you try to avoid having your identity put into reports, and when I was writing reports where I was present at something, I normally wouldn't put my identity in unless there were very, very few people there. Really, the idea is in terms of security, you don't want to be part of the chain of intelligence so that officers are wasting time investigating you. But it got to a stage, and I can't remember exactly what it was, something happened, and then it was decided in the management that it was a good idea to actually have me identified fully, but to probably write me down as I think it says here, as a quiet individual who rarely contributes to discussions, but is committed to animal rights activity. So it doesn't sort of highlight me particularly above any others, but it puts me in the role and doing certain things.
Was it because of a fear of an insider threat?
No.
What would be the purpose of having a report about you on the files if it was not to protect against that particular threat?
No, there was something else about... There may have been another report coming in because my van had been seen around, and maybe another special branch was doing inquiries. I'm guessing here, but it wasn't to do with the Arnie threat, no.
Or any other insider threat?
No, no.
I'm struggling to understand why this would be necessary then. Can you help us any further?
I've tried the best I can. It is difficult to remember, but it certainly wasn't to deal with any sort of insider threat. I think I'd become known in the regional forces as being involved, and so there may have been requests coming from to identify me. That's possible.
That would be to protect operational security.
I think so. Yeah, yeah.
Can we take that down now, please? Did you have any involvement in producing the newsletter for LBAG?
I think I wrote a couple of articles, yes.
Did you volunteer to do that?
Yes.
You have been described as behaving in a manner that was talkative, eager to please, and voicing support for direct action. Does that fairly represent the way?
It's quite a summary, but yes, I suppose, yeah, all of those would be relevant.
Can we go now, please, in file 5 to tab C92, 744893. This is a report. It's got an Earth First component, but I'm asking you the question because of what it says about the Lambeth Green Party.
Right.
It's an event pro forma, 9th of March 1992. If we look at the text at the bottom, please. During the Earth First roadshow at the squatted Dole office in Cold Harbour Lane, Shane Collins announced that in the next 2 weeks it was expected that McDonald's will begin refurbishment of a carpet warehouse on the corner of Acre Lane, SW2, and Brixton Road, SW9, into a large McDonald's restaurant outlet. As soon as work begins, Collins and other members of Lambeth Green Party are planning to blockade the road outside by sit-down protests, thereby causing traffic chaos in the area. He asked for any interested parties. If we could go over the page, please. At the Earth First Roadshow to provide him with contact numbers so that he can arrange for mobilisation meeting to take place at a later date. About 15 of those present expressed an interest in taking part in such a protest. Why were you reporting this?
Because the squatted Dole office was squatted by the anarchists around Brixton Hunt Sab type people, class war people. If they were bothered to go and turn up, then there was a potential for disorder from them.
And why were you reporting on a meeting that was organised by a party that participates in the democratic process?
They turned up and did this presentation at a meeting, and they were encouraging members of the squatting community to get involved.
Would it be fair to say that even if a party is involved in the democratic process, if it might be involved in something which would disturb the Queen's peace, it'll be reported anyway?
You know, I wasn't so much worried about the Green Party. It was the people that might be attracted who would be exactly that problem.
Can we take that down now and go in file 2, tab B, little 1, 13, 746 168. And if we could go at the top of the page, this is an SDS briefing note under the subheading 29th of June 92. Andy Coles mentioned again that the suspicions regarding HN1 had been raised by his group. George, etc., Jeff Shepherd also has been making inquiries. They seem to be on the same theme, i.e. a journalist. They also seem to think his bleep is too expensive a model for his occupation. This in fact is not the case, but it is a perception that is damaging. They seem to think some sort of expose will occur, probably against George. There is still doubt in their minds, and he has to persevere whether or not he is withdrawn in the long term. This is because we do not wish to compound any suspicion by a sudden exit. So is it right that you've reported back to your managers information you've gleaned to the effect that HN1 is suspected of being a journalist?
I'm reporting that the character George is pointing at HN1 as potentially an informant or a journalist.
And if we could go down the page, please. On the positive side, he will have to win their confidence by taking part in some illegal act which is not exposed or some sort of public order arrest. Whether they will trust him to do this is a problem. There is a good chance they will try and set him up in the near future. And if we can go to the end of the document to see who that's signed by, please. DCI HN 86.
Yes.
So the sentence on the positive side, he will have to win their confidence by taking part in some illegal act which is not exposed or some sort of public order arrest. Does that sentiment accurately is it accurately reflecting the SDS view of committing criminal acts or getting arrested?
It reflects the rite of passage of becoming accepted within the ALF, is that you had to be seen to be doing something illegal so that they had knowledge that you would do that. And I think they believed that if you did that, that you couldn't possibly be an undercover cop because you were committing crime. In my case, I think the one that I remember was of one individual asking me to go out and spray butcher's windows with hydrofluoric acid. It wasn't actually hydrofluoric acid, but that's what they told me it was. It's the classic thing of a Jif lemon squeezy bottle was the common weapon. You go out, squirt Anarchist and ALF symbols on a window. The theory was that the etching fluid would then leave that in the window. So it was often a test that, it was a test I was given to see if I was prepared to take part in criminal activity. So I guess that's where that's coming from, is you do gain more trust once you're seen to be taking that sort of step in support of the animal liberation struggle, and then you become more accepted.
And when you've described an example, did you spray what you had been told was hydrofluoric acid onto windows?
I did, yes. It wasn't hydrofluoric acid. There was no damage done.
Did you believe it to be?
Yes.
Is the conundrum of the central dilemma of trying to infiltrate the ALF that you have to get involved in crime before you're going to be invited into a cell?
You have to be seen to have the bottle, yeah. It would be the way that they would look at it, and to be trusted. Often you'd have people who would be sort of looking as if they were suitable, and that was the way you would approach them, would be to see if they'd be prepared to do something like that. It had to be criminal, but it needn't necessarily be real. If you could fake it, that was good enough.
So the activists who were thinking of making an approach to someone would test them with a false test? Is that
Well, that's
right?
what happened to me. I can't, well, unless the person didn't know how to mix hydrofluoric acid, of course, that could have been the case too.
And to be invited to do serious things into cells doing serious crimes, you needed to show that you were up for it.
Yeah, exactly.
What did HN86 say to you on the subject? Did you ever discuss it with him?
I think we had a discussion about this problem. In fact, I remember it. The reason why HM1 was suspected was because he walked through a flock of pigeons in Trafalgar Square and didn't look where he was going. It's as minor as that. I mean, the level of paranoia here is really off the scale, particularly when you come to talking about George.
I'm more interested in the commission of crime in order
Yes.
to gain acceptance and achieve your objective.
It was known that this is what you had to do.
How was it known?
It was common practice.
Is that
It happened before,
happened before, so
Yeah.
it derived from the deployments of
previous officers.
Bob
yeah.
Lambert and John Dines.
I guess, yeah.
Can we take that down now, please? Sir, would this be a convenient moment to stop for lunch?
Certainly. Give ourselves an extra minute and resume at 2:05.